Here with Mr. Charles Michael Abel. He is among the distinguished scientists and clinical research professionals in the field of radiology to receive the Fellow of the American College of Radiology. He's also in his 8th week of a hunger strike to demand legislative action on racial justice by the United States Congress. How are you doing today, Mr. Abel?
Doing great, hanging in here. It's been a interesting process that I've gone through with the hunger strike and advocating for racial justice. So, very interesting process. First time I've attempted this type of advocacy.
What has been the response so far, since you started the strike?
Well, I've gotten a lot of support from individuals around the country. Just a few people have joined in, but mostly people are supporting the effort. In terms of the Congress, they have been, as you could imagine, completely swamped with the election and their focus on the nomination for the Supreme Court, which I guess she just was sworn in yesterday. So that response from Congress has been nil about racial justice, and hence the entire point of doing the hunger strike. Yeah, they have not reached out to me directly. I've tried to contact their offices as well as on Twitter, and actually I spent about 2 weeks in Washington, D.C. trying to reach out. So there's not been any movement directly or any engagement with me on the hunger strike for racial justice.
How optimistic are you about receiving the demands for the legislation that you're asking for? Because I feel like the legislation seems like, pretty common sense. You're asking for a national ban on chokeholds, a national ban on no-knock warrants, and then a congressional vote on Reparations Remedy Bill, HR 40, by both houses of Congress. It seems like, those are very reasonable requests, especially in light of what has happened with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, obviously.
And what you're saying was my impetus for doing the hunger strike, because after months of protests all over the country in hundreds of cities, we have no national leadership to address those demands for racial justice with, and as you say, very simple change in the use of chokeholds. I think that is, a very direct and a simple thing that could be done by the U.S. Congress, and they have not moved on it at all. So that was my impetus for performing this hunger strike. And I'm just really disappointed in the leadership nationally. I think we have some movement in different cities where they've tried to address these concerns, but the national leadership has not been there. And I think collectively we have to continue to push and continue to advocate and push the U.S. Congress, because I think at the end of the day, we need national leadership on this. I'm not particularly optimistic at this point that they will address this, certainly not before the election. So that's kind of obvious. So I think after we move beyond the election, then I think we could begin to address this more directly with Congress.
You've talked about in past interviews, I guess, the experience of systemic racism and inequality in the workplace and unconstitutional laws that your family has suffered at. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. And I think my story is not unique. I think we all, on some level, come from the wrong side of the tracks. So my family is from South Carolina, my mother and my father. They grew up in small towns. My family, on my father's side, is primarily have a sharecropper background. So during that time, when he was coming up, his father, my grandfather, worked very hard as a sharecropper, and they both wanted a way out. And the only path that they saw was to migrate north to Baltimore, Maryland. And those experiences kind of informs what I'm doing now, because I understand that there is systematic racism at all levels. Obtaining a house, that was one of the big things in my family, but from my father and my mother to get us a house. But we searched for many neighborhoods and many homes that we could not purchase a home in. We grew up in East Baltimore, and eventually what my father was able to do was purchase land in Baltimore County, but it was purchased from another Black man who happened to own several acres in the area. And he was only parceling out and selling that land to Black folk. And that's how we were able to actually build our own home and have our own property in Baltimore. So all of those experiences informed me of, at the time, of course, I wasn't aware of it, but there was systematic racism. And myself personally, about 50% of the jobs, the locations that I've worked on and companies that I work for, I've been called the N-word at work, in an environment with other coworkers. So, I've experienced this as well. And, there has to be, we can't change the hearts of people, but we should have the system in place to protect us when we're at work and give us the dignity and respect that we deserve as professionals.
I'm sorry that you had to go through that. And you mentioned your family starting in South Carolina, and I was wondering if you were familiar with Tim Scott's police reform bill and what you thought about that, because I know I believe that the Democrats rejected that bill, and I know it spoke to at least one of your demands, which was the barring the use of chokeholds by federal officers. So I wanted to know if you had any thoughts about that particular bill.
Yeah, I thought it was lacking in a number of elements. He did have the chokehold ban in there, but I just felt like it didn't go far enough. And so I wasn't really in support of that effort. The other thing that bothers me, and I think it's important for the Black community at large, is to have all of their demands addressed, not this piecemeal. What we're finding is, there is very limited, comprehensive legislation that is being presented. Tim Scott, and the Republicans, I think they made an effort to begin to address it, but again, we see the same thing with the coronavirus relief bill, that there's no give and take, and that's just the gridlock of Congress, that we don't have that.
Wow. How long do you intend to continue the hunger strike?
Well, the hunger strike was originally planned for 60 days, from September 4th to Election Day, November the 3rd. So I am currently in the process of changing over, because I've been on water only for, I think, 6.5, 7 weeks now. So I'll be changing over to a juice only diet and ending the hunger strike prior to the election.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abel, and good luck with your hunger strike. And I appreciate you for taking the time to speak with me.
Well, I appreciate your interest, and hopefully, together collectively, we can get some movement on these needed demands for racial justice.
Most definitely. Have a great day.
You too.